Welcome, everybody. I'm Gigi Rosenberg, and I'm a public speaking coach. And I'm so excited to be here today with Miriam Schulman, one of my favorite people. She's an artist, and she's the founder of the Inspiration Place and the Artist Incubator Coaching Program. She helps artists grow thriving businesses. Miriam's career began on Wall Street until she left to pursue art full time. And she's been featured in Forbes, the New York Times, a bunch of TV shows. And I'm dying to know if she's actually met Al Pacino, because I once saw him on the Upper West Side. She has a popular podcast called The Inspiration Place. But most importantly, she is the author of this brand new book called Artpreneur, the step-by-step guide to making a sustainable living from your creativity, a book that I love. And we're actually going to dive into chapter 10 today, because I think even though it's about the 10 steps of selling, is really all about, or many of the tips are about public speaking. So welcome, Miriam.
Well, hey there, Gigi. I love that idea of this being like public speaking. And as soon as you said, because you said, oh, we're going to talk about the chapter you have in public speaking. I was like, what is she talking about? But as soon as you said chapter 10, I was like, oh, I get it. You're right.
Absolutely. Yes.
You're right. Because you're selling an idea.
Absolutely.
And chapter 10 is all about selling.
Yes. So I want to dive into step 1 in chapter 10, which is introduce yourself. And my favorite line from that step 1 is make your objective to treat everyone you meet as you would a guest at your party. Now, when I coach people how to be on a stage, I always say, I don't care if you're the host or not. I want you to be the host. Act like everyone's at your house for dinner. So when I saw this and I thought, oh my gosh, that's how Miriam thinks you should introduce yourself. Tell me a little more about how you put yourself in the mindset of you're a guest, you're my guest when you introduce yourself.
Yeah. So I think too many people, when they go into an art situation, it's they go into this idea feeling like they have to convince somebody or they have to win at that situation. And I think that's the biggest difference between people who come across as salesy when they have that mindset versus somebody where it just feels natural and authentic. So when I'm in an in-person event and I'm selling my art, I know that I am there to just help them enjoy what I have, just like, as you said, a host at a party. So it's just making sure they have a good time. And when they come into my space, I want to treat them the same way I would as if they were a guest in my home. And that begins with hi. And that is like social skills 101. I'm always so disappointed when I go into shops and they don't introduce themselves and they don't ask me who I am. And I usually don't buy when that happens. Not on purpose. It's not like it's premeditated, but there's a big difference.
Absolutely. Well, this leads us to what happens after the introduction, which is step 2, which is chit chat. And I find that chit chat can just be one of the hardest things for people to do, because it's sort of like, what do I say? What do I talk about, etc. So I would love to hear a situation and just some ideas you have for how to chit chat when you're just sitting there going, blank mind. I want to say something. What do I say?
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna give our listeners those ideas, but first I want to just talk about why it's important and why it's so hard for us. So especially for people who are a little bit introverted, a little bit on the shyer side, and you want to rush through that. You have your talking points, you want to get to them. And that's actually the opposite. You really do need to slow down and establish the rapport of we're just here to have a nice time together, not rushing to get to the next thing. So there's so many things you can do, but the easiest ones are the most basic. You talk about the weather. When I'm on Zoom, I'll ask somebody, where are you dialing in from? sounds like so 1990s AOL.com. But, where are you zooming in from? And if you're in person and it's that type of event, where you're in that booth situation, are you local? Are you not? Like I said, the weather, those things, they're just the basic things. You don't have to be fancier than that. And even when I'm talking on stage, it's the same sort of thing. So as part of my book tour, I have had the opportunity to speak on stage, but you really have to, that's why a lot of speakers will start with like a lighthearted joke. It's just, you don't have to rush into what your main talking points are immediately. People just want to get to know you first. Who are you?
So it sounds like what you're saying is the most important thing is to first establish this rapport that doesn't have a lot of content in it,
That's
but
right.
it's just more of you're sort of setting the stage.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to take a long time. Literally one or two things that will just break, they're icebreakers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and just to let them know we're in this together.
Right.
They're nervous too. They don't know what's going to happen for the next 30 to 40 minutes with you or however long you have together. So you want to make them feel comfortable.
That's great.
It's not
That's
about your
perfect.
comfort. That's something also to remember. It's not about you. It's
Yes,
never about
yes,
us.
yes. So that's great because often I'll coach people on changing their focus from being inward onto them. Like, how does my hair look? Did I just say something stupid? To like changing it to be outward on the other person. Are they getting what they need? Do they look confused, etc.? So it's so similar. That's
Yes,
great.
exactly.
So let's go on to then step 3, which you mentioned this thing you call a credibility marker. And I would love you to explain what a credibility marker is, and then maybe give me an example of how you might weave in a credibility marker so it doesn't sound like you're bragging or name dropping or whatever, but you're just weaving it into the story. You have a great example in the book about how to do that. Because sometimes I'll have, especially people I'm coaching who are young, who look maybe 22 and maybe they're in the financial services business and it's better if they seem a little bit older. I might have them add in how many years they've been in the business or when they used to work at such and such or whatever. So I would love to hear how you define a credibility marker and then how you advise people on just weaving that in.
Yeah. So when I wrote my book, Artpreneur, that's an example. So you didn't even realize I was about to do it. You thought I was about to give an example. But that's exactly how you bring in a credibility marker, is that you kind of weave it into the conversation. So that's something that as I've gone on more podcasts, I've become practiced now of saying, when in my book, Artpreneur, instead of just talking about my thing, because it drops in that I have a book on this topic. So if people are listening, they have a book, that would be something. I'm trying to go back to my days on Wall Street. So it's kind of like when you're interviewing, it's the same sort of thing. I don't think public speaking and interviewing are that much different either. Do you?
No, absolutely.
Oh, it's the same.
It's almost like another form.
Right. So I'm going back to that day. It's like, well, when I was working on the Orange County bankruptcy case, blah, 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 blah. Oh, when I worked for LTCM, so now these things that I'm saying right now, they mean something to somebody who was in the financial industry when I was working. Young people don't know what I'm talking about, baby. But that is the idea, is that right before you're about to say something, like, how can you weave it in? Now, the examples I give in the book have to do more with fine artists who want to slip in a credibility marker perhaps when they're in person. So the way something like that would work, and you can even combine it with your icebreaker, is like, oh, so what brought you to this art fair today? Did you happen to see the article with my art in it in the Greenwich Times?
That's a
You know,
great
like,
example. Right.
well, maybe that's why they're at my booth, and or I do this a lot on Instagram, actually. When I'm introducing myself to somebody who's a new follower, I will DM them and say, "Hey, Julie, welcome, blah, blah, blah. Did you find me because of my book, Artpreneur, or because of the Inspiration Place podcast?" So actually, there I'm dropping in two credibility markers. Now, it just sounds like I'm asking them how they found me. Do I care how they found me? Yeah, sort of. But really, the idea there is I'm letting them know, A, I have a book, B, I have a podcast.
That's so great. That's terrific. I want to move on to now jump ahead to step 5, which is body language. And I want to give you an example. Now that it feels like the world is really opening up, I've been attending a lot more networking events. And a lot of them are at the Hilton downtown, which is actually just a few steps away from the conference hotel where I met you like 6 years ago in Portland. So the worst time I find is getting to the conference hall and you walk in and there's like a zillion people and you don't see anybody you don't know, that you know right away. So it's a room full of, it seems like strangers. And I feel like there are two sets of people. One set, everyone's talking to each other and they seem very engaged. And then the other set is standing around holding their phone like this.
Oh
And
my
I'm thinking,
goodness.
uh-oh, who do I talk to? So, talk to me a little bit about body language in networking, or, the examples that you use from the book, or when you're at your artist booth. If you're on your phone, not so great. But tell me a little bit about the body language of networking. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, and I'm going to go beyond what I wrote in Artpreneur because of the examples that you're giving. So, first of all, when I am going to be at a networking event, I do something very different now than what I used to do. And that is, I do the pre connection. So, what does the pre connection look like? I'm going to be speaking at She Podcast. I'll go through the list of speakers. I'll go on LinkedIn and I'll reach out to them and say, "Hey, I'm a speaker. I'm speaking at She Podcast. I see you are as well. Would you like to connect?" So, and I don't even have to do this myself. By the way, I'll have my assistant. I'll give her the list and say, can you connect with everybody on LinkedIn?" And I do this whether it's a large conference or just 10 people at dinner, and I have the CC guest list of everyone's emails. I'll reach out to them or my assistant will reach out to them and I'll do a pre-connection. And what happens is that when you get there, even if you're not the one who did it, they all recognize you from your LinkedIn connection request. And the most hilarious thing is I had somebody at one of these dinners says, "You look so familiar." And of course, what I like to say to men who say that to me is like, "Oh, you must watch a lot of porn." Like I'm a porn star or something, just to like throw them off. And then it turned out later, the reason I looked familiar and he was like trying to go through, his Jewish geography or his college or whatever, it was just because I had sent him a LinkedIn request and he didn't remember. So that's tip number 1. Try to do a pre-connection if you can. Most people wait till they've gathered the business cards and do it afterwards. It's way more powerful to do it ahead of time. The second tip I would have, and this is again, walking into that room and not knowing who to talk to. And I got the tip I'm going to share now, I got from my friend Michael Roderick, who is a brilliant networker. And if you don't know him, Gigi, I'll introduce you to him. He's like a former theater producer.
Great.
So, yeah. So the tip he told me is to actually look at people's feet. So if two people are very engaged in conversation and they don't want anybody to come in, both of their feet will be parallel pointing to each other. If their feet are more like in a ballet first position, they're a little more open, and if at least one of them is open, that means they're open to being interrupted.
Wow.
So I will
great.
look for that. So that's why I'm saying this is beyond what I wrote in Artpreneur. And it's just about looking at the feet, and then you can more easily join in a conversation because you know ahead of time from that visual cue that they're open to a new person joining. Yeah.
That is so great. Well, one of the things I've done is when I'm not in a conversation, but I'm already hanging out in that room, I want to grab my phone because it feels embarrassing just to stand there. But I know that if I grab my phone and I'm like this, no one's going to walk up to me because I look too engaged.
Yeah.
So now I just practice standing there with sort of a Buddha smile around, just watching for people. And if I catch someone's eye, then I'll say, "Oh, what brought you here?" or some little chit chat thing to begin a conversation. Once I met a new client by just saying to her, "Oh, do you know where the coat room is?" And then she said, "Oh, it's there." And then we started yakking. So it
Right.
could almost be anything, but I really resist the urge to pick up my phone because that body language says, and who knows what my feet are doing at that point, but I love that tip about the feet. The
Yeah,
other
so
thing,
you don't have to worry about your feet when you're in a conversation already with somebody. It's when you want to be the interrupter.
I love that.
Yes. And then
Yeah.
just to float to bring it back to what you talked about, the body language. So the reason I put it in the book Artpreneur is about when you're in a booth, you have to create that body language that is welcoming. Now, some people, like me, I guess, need to be told this is the body language to look for. Some people will do that automatically. They don't like, they have a very high emotional IQ, and most of us are somewhere in the middle. But you want to create your body posture in a way that is inviting. That means don't cross your arms. Don't put your hands in your pockets because crossing your arms looks defensive. Putting your hands in your pockets like you're hiding something. So be sure that you're dressed warmly enough so that you're not crossing your arms or putting your hands in your pocket just to warm up. So that what I say is tip number one. If you're in a situation where you are an art person in a booth, or maybe you're a vendor in a booth, have something to do in there that's not being on your phone that will kind of make you have like a mild busyness, not so busy that people feel they can't come in, but just enough that they don't feel like you're going to come right over to them and attack them the minute you get into the booth. You're not just standing there staring, waiting for your prey to come in. So you have more of a detached look about you. So the examples I give in the book is things like maybe you're updating your prices, maybe you're just cleaning your display up, maybe you're straightening things up.
That sounds great. Well, you titled this chapter Listen to Understand when it really is the 10 steps to selling. So I was very struck by that chapter that really focuses on listening. So, what was your thinking about titling the chapter about selling, titling it Listen to Understand?
The best way to make sales is to ask better questions. So it's not about having your 3 steps about what it is and then throwing that on to whoever steps into your booth. Now, if we're going to talk about how that works with public speaking, you have to have done a lot of listening before you get up on that stage. You have to already know what questions your audience has, because I do a lot of webinars where I am basically selling my ideas and selling a program, and I'm not asking them questions. But by the time I've gotten to that point, I've asked my audience and the people who want what I have, I've asked them so many questions. I know what they're thinking. I know what their wet dreams are. I know what their night sweats are. I know all these things. So I'm able to speak in a way that really resonates with them. And they're thinking, oh, she understands me.
That's really interesting because I think I often work with people who want to be better at thinking on their feet. And what the reason they're afraid of listening is because they don't know, or they fear they're not going to know. Like, what if they hear something and they don't know what to say about it? Do you know what I mean? So they don't want to listen and get interrupted from what their little pre-programmed speech is going to be. But it sounds like you have listened so much that it's almost like 99 times out of 100 you know what the question is going to be and you've answered it before, and so it doesn't feel like you're trying to just grab an answer, but you've already got that answer in you.
That's right. Now, to help people with being thrown from the types of questions and objections they're going to get, I included in that chapter an overcoming objections chart. And the whole point of that is not to get a yes no matter what. The whole idea of that chart is really to help you understand what's going through the other person's mind when they ask these things, because it doesn't really matter what exact words you use. It really doesn't. We want to think it does because we think if only I had that script, I would, sell more things. But the truth is, it's understanding where they're coming from and not believing other people's mindset problems, like having a strong mindset your own and seeing through their, let's just can we say bullshit on your program? See through, oh, you'll edit it out if
Totally
you can't.
fine. Or we'll edit
Okay.
it out.
All right.
So, one of the things that has always impressed me about you and what I feel is one of your superpowers is the way you invite people to engage and the way you invite people to follow you and invite people to make comments and invite people to like your podcast, etc. And in my experience of it is that you do it in a way where it doesn't feel like you're asking me for a favor. It feels like you're inviting me to a party. And those two things have such a different vibe. So I really want to know on your end, how, like, is there any, like, how do you do that so it feels that way? Is it just that you've got that mindset of make it like you're inviting him to a party? Because it's so inviting. It's like I can't help but like it or follow it or write you the blurb or whatever.
Okay, so there's two things going on here. It's not that I'm telling myself make it like a party. It's that I don't see that asking people for things is a problem. That's a big
Okay.
difference.
So were you born that way? Or did you learn that later?
Gosh, I don't know. I think I think one thing, and I know that this was something I understood even back in high school, is it's always about what the other person wants. What's in it for the other person? So, like what I say in high school is I remember writing my college essay and kind of stepping into the psychology of what does the admissions officer really need to hear right now from this B plus / A minus student who's applying to a school way above her grade point average. Well, I knew that I had to pull on their heartstrings. And I talked about my father passing away and moving schools every time. And then, oh, and he went to this college and now this is the legacy that's left for me. It's kind of like just stepping into what is in it for the other person. And too many times started talking about this conversation right from the beginning. We're always so focused on ourselves, and most people we're focused on ourselves and what's in it for us. And we forget that nobody cares about us. No, truly, they care about what's in it for them. And maybe not even in such a transactional way, but I'm always very aware that there has to be something in it for somebody else because we're very lazy. We're just lazy people. Now, the example I gave was different, but when it comes time to people leaving reviews or blurbing, so with you, Gigi, I thought about, okay, well, what's in it for you to blurb my book? You're going to have your name at the beginning of my book, hopefully in front of your ideal audience. That would be on Amazon. You're right. You write books. That's something that's going to help you. So these are things that I was aware of that when I approached you in my mind, I wasn't thinking that you were doing something for me. I felt that it was mutually beneficial.
That's interesting because I guess the vibe I got was I was being invited to a party that I would have fun at. So that's. So
well, but then
that was great.
I'm thinking about what's in it for you. And then the
Right,
other thing,
right.
while you said the vibe of being invited to a party. So I don't remember what point I invited you, but I remember for many people, I would say, and like high school. Oh, and guess who else is at this party? Meaning with the blurb. Guess who else is blurbing the book? I already got this person and that person. So it's like high school. Oh, this cool girl is going to be there and that cool guy is going to be there. So of course you want to come.
Right. So this is a party I want to go to.
That's right. Yeah. This is something
great.
You want to be associated with.
Yeah. So I want to ask you now a couple of other questions just about what happens to you when you're just about to do something, whether it's speak, whether it's go to your book launch or whatever, and you're dealing with a lot of nerves. How do you deal with a case of the nerves pre-presentation?
Ooh, I love this question. So recently I had to speak I got to speak at this event, and my sister-in-law said, "Are you nervous?" I said, "Oh, not even a little bit." But then like right before it's about to happen, I was like, I lied, like, I don't think I was really lying. I didn't think I was going to be nervous, but right before I did get a little nervous. But it's really when you are nervous, it's that adrenaline is the same feeling you have when you're excited. And so it's really about self-talk about, okay, I'm really excited that I get to do this. And if you have that mindset that everybody's on your side, that this is not all about you, you're there to help them. What's in it for them? They're not here to judge you about how well you delivered it. They are there for what it is that you have to say and how you can help them. And so I keep my focus on them.
Okay, so it's two things. One is to say to yourself in the moment, interesting. I'm feeling these feelings, and this is the same feeling as being excited. And remember who I'm talking to, what they need, and focus on them.
Yeah.
That's great. Good. Thank you. So when speaking doesn't go as planned, there's a mistake, there's an embarrassing moment, there's whatever. What do you do? And maybe you can give me an example.
Everything is content. It's like Nora Ephron, I think, said this. A lot of people have said that. Maybe it was Nora Ephron's mother. So, it's one thing when you slip on a banana peel and people are going to laugh at you. But if you can talk about it, then now suddenly they're laughing with you instead of at you. And people like to know that you're human. Some of the best musicians and vocalists that I adore, they're not perfect, and that's why we love them. So my husband and I this morning, we were talking about Janis Joplin, and she's far from a perfect voice. She's not beautiful. She's not what anyone's idea of what a female rock star should look like. She's not thin. But that's what people love about her is that she doesn't have all those rough edges polished away. And so many of us want to get it all perfect and polish all those edges until we're boring. So it's okay to make mistakes. It just shows that you're not boring.
You don't have any examples of any
I
time that
No,
you made a big.
it's not that I haven't. It's just I just I can't
Yeah.
remember things anymore.
That's
And it's
great.
like I don't,
Why
yeah, it's like okay.
why dwell on them? Yeah, great.
Right.
Any speakers you admire?
I just heard the most beautiful interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Dana Bash, and it's on YouTube. It's a CNN clip. I just saw it last night, and he was talking about the hate and the rise of anti-Semitism. And one of the things he said was, "My father was a Nazi." Do you know how bold it is to begin a speech about anti-Semitism with that confession? That's a politician who is not worried about people pleasing what other people think. He's worried about speaking the truth. And I felt that it was very powerful and a great example of what a good orator can look like.
Wow, wow, that's amazing. So, one of the last questions I have for you today is where do you go for inspiration, for wisdom, or for just any resources that you can't live without?
Okay, so I'm going to do three. So one is going into nature, reconnecting, going into the woods. I live in New York City, but there's Riverside Park, and we also go to the country a lot. So the more you can get into nature, take your shoes off, feel the earth under your feet, and feel really grounded, the healthier we are as humans to connect with nature. The second, I would say, is spirituality. And by that, it can be organized religion, but does it have to be? But don't dismiss religion. Praying is meditation too. And sometimes these rituals do help us get into that mindset because you're not going to at least I hope not, you're not going to whip your phone out at church or synagogue, hopefully. I don't know. I don't know what these young people do anymore, but who knows? Okay. And then the third one for me is the museum, the temple of the museum. I just find there's something so peaceful about these institutions where you can see beautifully curated art. Usually there's a great restaurant involved with that, at least for me, and a gift shop with a cool souvenir. So that would be my three main ways of filling up my creative well.
I'm dying to know, what's your favorite New York City museum? Or do you have one?
I do, but it's almost like asking what's your favorite ice cream flavor or favorite child. I do love the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually just there yesterday. It's great. And they're doing better. They've been bringing in more women, more artists of color, and I really like the direction that the museum has been taking the last few years.
That's great. Well, I want to know how listeners can find you and about how they can find the book Artpreneur. I always encourage people to go to their local bookstore, but let me know a little bit about how people can find you.
Okay. So if you like what you heard today, these are the kinds of things that I talk about very vulnerably on my own podcast, The Inspiration Place. If you want chapter 1 of Artpreneur, I am giving that away absolutely free. Go to schulmanart.com/believe. The chapters Choose to Believe, and Schulman is spelled like school, SCHULMANART. And we do have book bonuses. It does not matter if you buy the audio, you go to your local bookstore. I don't care where you buy the book from, but if you go to artpreneurbook.com, just take your order number and then pop that into that page. We have a slew of juicy bonuses in there to complement the book.
That's perfect. So, anything else you want to say about public speaking or just anything else on your mind today?
Yes. So I would say that even if you're having trouble believing in your result, whatever that is for you, the result of being a public speaker, the result of being a full-time artist, the result of, I don't know, making more money in your life, who knows, finding a spouse, whatever it is. If you're having trouble believing in the result, know that you can always believe in your ability to take action. So that's why I ended the book with keep marching forward. So that's how I want to end our conversation today. Keep taking those steps, not marching in place, but one foot in front of the other. And don't blame your boots. It's not about the circumstances, but keep taking forward steps, and you will make progress.
That's beautiful and a perfect place to end. Thank you so much, Miriam. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. Thanks.